Hi, my name is Robert Shelley with Shelley Law, and my law firm assists physician practice owners with drafting employment contracts and independent contractor agreements for new physicians in their practice. Today, I'm going to talk about 5 major things that need to be thought about prior to drafting a physician contract. So, the first thing the practice owner needs to determine is whether they're going to classify the new physician as an employee or an independent contractor. In my experience, the practices that want to classify every physician as an independent contractor are most likely misclassifying them. The IRS has a 20-factor test that kind of walks through the factors that go into whether someone is an employee or an independent contractor. And most of the time, the people that want to classify everyone as an independent contractor just don't want to pay benefits or employment tax on what they pay them. So you need to determine if the person that you're bringing in actually fits into an employed role or an independent contractor role. Certainly, there are times where if you're bringing in somebody part-time and they're just filling in on the weekends, or occasionally it would make sense that they're an independent contractor. But most of the time, someone's working for you, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 or whatever, very likely they're an employee. The next thing would be the compensation structure. So how are you gonna pay them? There's really 2 major ways for a smaller physician-owned group to pay an employee. One would just be a straight base salary. The second would be some kind of net collections-based system, so meaning the physician would receive a certain percentage of everything that the practice collects on their behalf. I find a hybrid of the 2 is probably the best route to go. Give the physician a minimum amount that they're guaranteed to get, and then put a substantial part of their compensation into how productive they are, how much they collect. Most smaller physician practices do not use RVUs as a measure. That's usually saved for hospitals, healthcare network clinics, that type of thing. So some kind of hybrid of a base salary and a net collections-based agreement usually is a great way to keep the physician productive, because they're always, going to have, let's say, half of their compensation tied to productivity. But it also gives them a little bit of stability as well. The next thing would be the restrictive covenants. So the 2 most important ones for most private practice owners are the non-compete and the non-solicit. The worst case scenario for a physician practice owner is to bring in a physician and then they leave, they snag patients, they take key employees, and they open up a clinic, down the street. So it makes sense to keep some strong non-compete and non-solicit language in the contract, assuming you're in a state where they are allowed. There are a handful of states where they are unenforceable, but for the most part, almost the vast majority of states in the United States allow some kind of reasonable non-compete. So you need to think about how long it's going to last, what's the geographic limitation, what specialty you're going to stop the physician from working in. So for instance, if you are employing someone as just a family practice doctor, do you also want to stop them from doing, urgent care or being a hospitalist or going into the ED or something like that? It doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. But you need to protect your interests. Non-solicit as well, meaning when the physician leaves the practice, they can't actively, in this case, I would put language to this, that they can't hire anyone employed with the firm, usually for the last 12 months. So restrictive covenants certainly are important as well. The next thing would be malpractice insurance. If they're an independent contractor, generally it's the responsibility of the physician to get their own policy. However, if they are an employed physician, you're going to pay for the underlying annual premium, and then you're going to have to choose whether you get a claims made or occurrence-based policy. For the most part, normal, smaller physician groups would have a claims made policy, and then they would make the physician pay for their own tail when they leave. It's pretty rare to have a group have an occurrence-based policy simply because it's more expensive. It's about a third more expensive per year. And so if you have a claims-made policy, it's a third less, and then you're putting the tail cost onto the physician who's leaving, and that way you save a couple $1,000s a year, sometimes more depending upon specialty. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about today would be the notice requirement. So any contract is going to have some kind of without cause termination, meaning either party can terminate the agreement at any time with a certain amount of notice to the other party. Most of the time, it's somewhere between 60 to 90 days in healthcare. However, as the practice owner, it's certainly not uncommon to have it be a longer period of time. This will allow the practice group to try to secure a replacement for the leaving physician. And then obviously on the opposite end of that is the provider is going to want a shorter amount of notice because it's much easier to switch jobs when you don't have to wait 6 months or whatever. So the notice requirement certainly is important as well. So taking those kind of 5 factors into account, certainly there's more, but today we're just going to talk about that 5. You can create a strong and successful contract for both parties. I find working with some practice owners who kind of just want to put the screws to the employee, and you certainly can do that. Those employees don't generally last long, and there's higher turnover. That's not the kind of, mindset that I take. I think it certainly needs to be something that protects the interests of the owner, but is also fair and equitable for the provider as well. When you have those situations, you'll have providers that stay with you much longer, and in the long run, it's usually much more financially beneficial. So if you have any questions about drafting a physician contract for a new employee or a new independent contractor, feel free. You can contact me and my firm at the in the description down below, phone number, email, website, or if you leave a comment, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have as well. So anyway, I appreciate you watching the video, and take care.